is my meeting? What am I sharing?
Okay, I'm just gonna grab my iPad real quick. I'll be right back.
Minimize. Can you hear me now, Linda?
Yes. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Linda.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. Let's see. Hi, Dinesh. Oh, I don't know if you can hear me yet. Hi, Francesco and Alessandra. Good evening.
Hello, Francisco, Alejandra. Mahesh, Chitra.
Hello.
Hello, hello, Chitra.
Hello.
Hello.
And hello on YouTube. We have a Kadampa Center member who now lives in Washington on YouTube, Washington State. So hi, we miss you. Hi, Nico. Hi, Dinesh. I don't know if you heard me before. I think you were still connecting.
Yeah, I was still connecting. Hey, good evening. Yeah,
Nico, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you, Hamid?
All right.
So we're at 7:01, but I'll give it another minute or so. As it looks like folks are still coming in. And I'll just remind everyone that this is class 4 of 5. So next week is our last class on emptiness. And I don't have solid dates yet for module 13, which is Introduction to Tantra. Since Khensa Rinpoche, we're waiting to hear what his travel dates will be and what his teaching schedule will be. So as soon as we have an idea of, or not an idea, as soon as we have those dates solidified, we will figure out when we're gonna do the Tantra module. So the dates that are on the calendar right now may not be the dates that we go with, but then again, they might be. So stay tuned to all that. Hi, Tara. Hi, Joan. Does anyone have any questions before we get started while we're waiting for folks? No. Okay. All right, Hema, I guess let's go ahead and get started then.
Okay, so let's start by, first of all, just doing the prostrations, right? So let's just go and do Om Namo Manjushriye Namo Sushriye Namo Tamashriye Soha. Om Namo Manjushriye Namo Sushriye. Om Namo Manjushriye. Thupten Children does a very good job explaining what prostrations mean, what is the folding of the hand, how should you fold it, what does it mean, what's the left hand, right hand, there's a whole meaning behind it. But if you were to really consider and understand it, you're basically coming down and saying, I want that knowledge. I want to become a Buddha, is what you're saying. A lot of people have a hard time understanding, why am I bowing down to somebody? So I want you to understand the humbleness, the nature we are developing, and we are opening up to learn. So it's a wonderful practice to do. And of course, Geshe-la does it, right? Our teachers do it. So we got to think through that. So anyways, let's just do our typical bringing our mind to the present time and location, so that we'll do a little calm abiding meditation. I think you're all familiar, unless you're first time coming in today, is to make sure your back is straight. You're not leaning too backwards, just like a stacked coins, just kind of straight back. Your legs, if you're sitting in a chair, obviously your feet are on the floor. Unless you're seated on the floor, then you want to do either a full Vajra position, cross-legged, or half Vajra position. Your arms are relaxed, and your right hand is over your left hand, and the thumbs are touching. This just makes the connection of all the channels. Your head is slightly tilted, okay, and your jaw is relaxed. Your mouth is slightly open, and your tongue is sitting on the back of your top teeth on the palate. Okay, and your eyes, they say, if you can, slightly open. And the reason for that is so we don't doze off. Okay, so and you're aware of your surroundings, but you're still in your mind. So that's the reason for that. And let's just do a little breathing exercise. And the idea here is it develops our concentration. Breathing is a neutral activity we do every single day. And therefore it helps us to concentrate and bring our mind, calms our mind. And so all you do is you breathe in and out naturally. Don't force it. Don't make it heavy. Don't make it less. Just the natural movement. And just observe it. And if you find yourself wandering off into some thought, just remind yourself and bring back your attention to your breath. And let's set our motivation. So before we begin to make an effort to ensure that the motivation for listening to the teachings and thinking about them is appropriate for this teaching, which is inspired by the perfection of wisdom teachings or sutras, discourses that were provided to all disciples of Buddha, especially those who seek supreme Buddhahood. So therefore, it is appropriate to generate a Mahayana motivation, universal vehicle, the compassionate family, taking the objective of oneself, achieving the state of supreme enlightenment so that one will be perfect cause for the welfare of all living beings. And in order to achieve that, it is necessary to gain a host of realizations, one of the most important of which is the realization of the correct view of reality. And in order to generate that, it is necessary to engage in those practices of listening, thinking, and meditating on the perfection of wisdom teachings. So we are here now to practice listening to these teachings, which is to generate the wisdom of listening that supports thinking about what was heard. This in turn produces the wisdom of thinking that supports the meditation on what is understood by the thinking. And this in turn produces the wisdom of meditation. It is through this path that we enter into the Arya path or the noble path and ultimately achieve Buddhahood. On the outline, we have completed 3 of the 5 sessions. It is not difficult to complete all 5. And last week, I introduced you to the 4-part analysis, which is the ultimate analysis to identify the emptiness of true existence. We spent a great deal of time discussing the first of those, which is to identify the object's true existence, and then the others follow. And so while setting this intention, I would like to read a section from Lama Tsongkhapa's 3 principal aspects of the path, because the beginning of this session deals with dependent arising, which is called the king of reasons. So Lama Tsongkhapa equates dependent arising with emptiness. So think about that, dependent arising with emptiness. And Nagarjuna also does this in his opening verse of his book, Verses on the Fundamental Wisdom. So Lama Tsongkhapa states, one who sees the infallible cause and effect, infallible meaning certain. So one who sees the infallible cause and effect of all phenomena in samsara and nirvana and destroys all false perceptions has entered the path that pleases the Buddha. Appearances are without question dependent origination. Voidness is free of assertion or declarations. As long as these 2 understandings are seen as separate, one has not yet realized the intent of Buddha. However, when these 2 realizations are simultaneous and concurrent, from a mere sight of infallible dependent origination comes the knowledge that completely destroys all modes of mental grasping. At that time, the analysis of profound view is complete. Lama Tsongkhapa is famous in Tibet for his presentation on emptiness. He had a special way of presenting it. He's the founder of the Gelug tradition. Gelug literally means virtuous. His tradition is also known as the Ganden tradition because he had a mountain hermitage called Ganden. His tradition is popularly compared to other Buddhist traditions in Tibet as one of that represents or presents the basis, the path, and the fruit of Buddha's teachings from the point of view of an ordinary person. Of course, there are different ways of presenting the Buddha's teachings in order to sneak the right view. Lama Tsongkhapa does it by presenting the validity of what is ordinarily valid. It's a valid perception we are talking about on the basis of the logic of Dharmakriti. He makes a fine distinction between the valid part of an ordinary person's experience and the deceptive part. Even Lama Yeshe mentioned one time, in reference to all the talk about avoiding the extreme of nihilism in developing the right view, that maybe it wasn't so bad to get a little bit nihilistic. He said people cling too strongly to their beliefs and they can benefit from the assertion that none of their experiences have anything to do with reality. According to the middle way view, it means being in the center between the extremes of existence and non-existence. Okay, thank you. Bring your attention to the class. So again, this is class 4, like Linda said. And the key thing here is to realize that this is a lifelong training or teachings. You have to practice this. And there are 3 things we talk about consistently. You heard that in the meditation again today, that you listen, then you contemplate or analyze, and then you meditate on it. We've been so habituated with seeing things as concrete, right? You, me, everything around you, that we gotta have this visual and see how things truly are and how they appear to us. That's the key point of this. And why? Remember, if you attended the last 3 classes, we talked about it cuts the root of ignorance, which we call fundamental confusion. That's what confuses everybody. And ignorance is the cause of what they call the poisons, attachment and aversion, right? And anger and desires and so forth. As soon as that I does not get what it wants, it does what it wants. It sees things pleasurable or not so good and so forth. That starts the cycle. And if you remember the 12 links again, just a reminder as a review, how it all starts at ignorance. And then what happens, you get the name, then you have the contact, then you get the feeling, and then you have the tactile touch and sound and all that. And all of a sudden you start to cling, and then the clinging becomes even more grasping. I want this, I don't like this, this party is crazy, this party is good, all these kind of things happen. And then ultimately that's what you become. And remember we talked about personal identity. Who are you? Whatever is in your mind prominently is who you are. And that's the seed that takes you to the next birth in some way, right? So the idea is to recognize how to cut that ignorance away so you don't cycle through this samsara of birth and death and aging and so forth. So that's called liberation. When you remove that, you are liberated. Okay, so we need to understand that. So today's class, I again will have that slide to make that connection. I just don't want you to lose, because when we get into the depth of logic and why and let's look for the I and all that, you kind of forget what the main umbrella overarching meaning, what is it that we are trying to achieve? And I want you to keep that in mind. And all of these things are teachings from our teachers, lineage teachers, trying to help us to understand how we normally see things and how it should be seen. Okay, so that's why we get into this nitty-gritty. And so that's the reason for logic, which we'll cover some of it today. We'll quickly again go through the 4-point analysis. Then we'll do a small meditation 4-point analysis of the I, and then dependent arising, a little summary of that. Okay, and then I'll talk about these 5 Mahayana paths. We'll go through Heart of Perfection or Heart Sutra. We'll go through that, and then we'll end with a meditation. And that's today's plan. So again, here is that slide that you saw last time. Again, think of the overarching connection. Remember how we listen, analyze, and then we meditate on these things. Why? To remove ignorance, the root cause of cyclic existence. That's the reason for understanding the topic of emptiness or voidness or selflessness, okay, or shunyata. Okay, again, the teachings have come all the way from Buddha. It was the second turning of the wheel, they call it. When he was awakened, his first turning of the wheel was to the disciples that he had met earlier in his life, and he talked about the 4 Noble Truths. In the second teaching on emptiness, which is through Heart Sutra, which we'll cover today, was given in a place called Rajagira, in a state called Patna right now in India. And that's where he gave the teachings on emptiness through the Heart Sutra was taught there. Then you need to understand that the two truths, how we relatively exist with name and thoughts, and our mind imputing for all these things on it, like you become very concretized, you exaggerate the way we see things. However, ultimately, when you analyze and look at it, you find that everything is dependent arising, and that there is no concrete self, neither here nor outside in the phenomena. Everything is dependent arising. You can think about that. That's a good analysis to do sometimes. Look around and see what truly comes from itself. And because it is dependent arising, and because it's impermanent and things are moving, we are here and we are able to change, we are able to learn, we are able to move, and we can change our minds. So we should understand that. Okay, and we already talked about ignorance causing the birth, suffering, sickness, old age, and death. And that's the confusion we want to remove so that we can see the reality the way it exists. And then ultimately our goal is to become enlightened, have a perfect compassion, wisdom, and power to help other sentient beings. Okay, so always remember that that is the core of these sessions. So let's talk about the 4-point analysis. I can start by saying that if I were to tell you you're playing, if I told you that that car is parked in zone A, in that parking lot, you would expect that car to be there. So when you go there, you go to zone A and you find the car. Same way, the first thing of 4-point analysis is to identify what is it that you're going to refute. So we are saying the I, that we perceive this exaggerated I, that we feel it in our chest when a fear comes or something big, something of desire comes to you, you sense it in yourself, that I, and we feel that it exists with you, that this package is the I. That's the I we're looking at. And if you want to refute it, the very first thing you got to do is identify it. How does that I exist? So then you do, okay, so then it's a logic, right? The logic is, if I told you the car is in zone A, the logic would be, it should exist in the parking lot or not. So you would say, determine the mode of existence of such an I. How does it exist? Okay, so is it identical with the aggregates, or aggregates meaning, you remember the definition of aggregates? Form, so form, body, feelings, now you're talking about mind, and discrimination, then all those mental factors other than feelings and discrimination, there are 49 of them. And I kind of mentioned them last night, that our mind goes through this so quickly, and these are all kind of things, lying and divisive speech. And how, we can go through so many. Matter of fact, I have some of them listed here. So let me just share them. So intention, contact, attention, aspiration, belief, mindfulness, wisdom, faith, shame, embarrassment, non-attachment, non-ignorance, pliancy, consciousness, equanimity, it goes on and on. So that's about, when you take mind and its potential, the first module, after the next one, it follows that one. When we start again, you will go through some of these things and you will understand how all these factors of mind, okay? So know that this aggregate, so the I either is part of all that or it's not. So then you have to look at it. The third point is, let's find out whether it is part of those aggregates or it's not, or it's independent. So a lot of these meditations we do, let's look for the I. Sometimes you'll hear even Geshe-la say, well, look around. Is it in your hand? Is it in your leg? Is it in your feelings, mind? Where is that I? So, but there's something in you saying, well, it's there. And maybe it's the whole package here. And that's the point of this, to show you that you have to look at it logically, very logically. If I were to say something is there within the square, you find the square, you look for it, either you find it or you don't find it, then you can say it's not there or it's there. Same way, you must identify the I. Then you can learn to negate it, saying, okay, let's find out if it's there or not. And then how does it exist if it is there? That's the 4-point analysis summary. Okay. So now, I also can tell you that when you look at the first point, we think about sometimes the I may be something imputed on the body and sometimes in the mind. We kind of think it's kind of put together, as I was saying, it's like a genuine I that presents itself instinctively. and which we grasp at that I. Okay, but then what happens to that I is it kind of gets merged between mind and the body, and it becomes one, and we then see this is me. That solid, concrete feeling you get, that I we're looking at. Okay, so that's what happens to us. So then you got to think about it. Well, this I can't be my mind and just my mind and just my body. It can't be two eyes. You know, it must be the one I. So then we find out whether it exists independently or not. So when you go through the 4-point analysis, that's the kind of thinking they go through logically to find out whether I exist or not. And we'll have a small meditation on that today. But any question on what the 4-point analysis is, has been very helpful to people. There are quite a few meditations on this that you can find. And we've gone through one last class, and maybe we'll go through one this time also. Just a slightly different way of looking at it. Even the words like I and me, those are mere words, right? So what does that mean? So we'll go through that. But I wanted to at least cover that in a summary. So the last one is a very simple, I just wanted to make an example. I forgot to mention it. Then when you examine the possibility of existing different from the 5 aggregates, the form, the feelings, the discrimination, all the other factors, compounding factors that they call it, and consciousness, the mind itself. It's like saying, okay, here's a goat, sheep, and a bull, but I'm looking for the bull. So if you eliminate the goat and the sheep, bull should be findable, right? It's that logic. So if you're looking for the I in all these aggregates, if you remove one thing at a time, the I should be there. But you find out it does not exist that way. And that's the whole point of the 4-point analysis.
And I'll just remind folks that if you do have a question, you can either just raise your hand, and if you're on YouTube, just put your question in the chat and I'll relay it to Hemant.
Okay. So let's do a little meditation on the I a little bit, okay? It gives you a little idea. So just take your position and do a couple of those nice breaths in and out, natural. Don't force them. Just relax your mind and open your mind to listening dharma. But first focus on your breath and just concentrate on that. So first, bring your mind to your mind an appearance of yourself that seems to concretely exist. You do this by thinking of yourself, such as who you are, what you want out of life, how you are going to go about getting it, what progress you think you are making, what problems you are facing, and how you intend to solve them. And I encourage you to use terms like me and I, and to feel your presence. And remember, the main purpose of this part of meditation is to bring to the mind the appearance of your personal existence as truly existing. So don't get carried away with thinking about some of the topics we've proposed or we've talked about. Simply bring your mind and say, here I am, right? This is who I am. Now decide that you, or the I-ness, truly exists, and you, or you-ness, would be findable, as the labels I or me or you would exist independently of those labels. Let me repeat that. Decide if you truly existed, you would be findable, as the labels I or me, or you would exist independently of those labels. So then take it further. If you are findable as the label I and me, you could not truly exist as you are one thing, while these are two different labels. So if you are findable as either the label I or me, you would not truly exist, as you are a person, and these labels are pronouns, descriptive words. Simply words, simply labels. Also, if you were the label I or me, you could not truly exist, as these labels do not truly exist. Think about that for a second. These are conventional words, sound. As pronouns, they are sounds that form part of a language. The sound I is a product of air exhaled from your lungs, vocal cords, different positions of your mouth that includes your tongue and lips. The sound I requires several movements of your mouth, as does the sound me. As these words are dependently arisen, they do not exist in their own right. So you do not exist independently of labels, whether they are I, me, your family, or given names, etc. If not for these labels, you would not appear at all. Your body or mind may appear, but not you. Think about that for a second. It almost reminds me of when you were just born and there was no name given to you. Did you know? Did you have that I, me at that point? Simply after that name and label is given, we start to form our mind as truly existing. So now determining that I do not truly exist as my existence depends on the labels that are not me, and these are dependent arising as well. So focus your attention in the absence of the inherently existing person you thought you were. Okay, thank you. Bring your mind back to you, to the class. Thank you very much. Again, the meditation just emphasized how, because of name, thoughts, words, because of conventional language, we see that a certain way, and we form these images in our mind, and then we see, oh, there it is. But if you really analyze it logically, remember it's all logic, truly find fact, then you'll find that there is no real self that you think you are. Simply name, thoughts, words, language. Then we use the words I and me. So just something to think about. Again, these things take a little while. We've been practicing this kind of thinking, not the one with the emptiness, but I truly exist type feeling for many, many, many years. It takes a little time to fully grapple with it, understand it, and then you can meditate on it. So understand that this is not something that happens right away, because our mind gets twisted in that words. Because as soon as you use the word, you have an image of something, and that image itself is just a created image. But when you start to really think that even those words are thoughts, then you realize how things are. Okay, so anyways, we'll go to the next piece. I just want to cover very quickly the next piece, sorry. I think I'm going to go here. So let me go one more back. So dependent arising summary. I think we've covered a lot of this, but just a couple of these things that you need to understand. In the old philosophical days, logicians used the word syllogism, where they just logically approach things to find out if this is true, then this must be it. If that is true, this must exist. They just went through some sort of a very logic. I'm not going to get into this logic and bore you, but we want to get to the main point here. And what I want to say is that every reason the Buddha used to prove the assertion about reality ultimately derived from the fact that if something originates dependently, such as depending on causes and conditions, it cannot truly exist. Just makes, even by convention, it makes sense. If things have causes and conditions for it to become, it cannot exist independently because it becomes a cause to the next effect. It's always moving. Okay, and we'll just look at it in a couple of ways very shortly. We've given you examples of the cup, the rainbow, the Harry Potter, any kind of the logic used, it demonstrates a structure, okay? And then it gives you the keys to build upon it, and then demonstrates if that thing exists or does not exist. So that's why they use the logic in it. But if you think about the dependent arising, there are three types. Things that arise or originate from causes and conditions. That makes sense? Okay. Think through that. Things that are dependent on their parts. So think about that. If you look at something, at least you observe a part. If I were to say a car, for example, a good example, you see a steering wheel, you see the wheels, you see the glass, the front, the back, and all that. Those are parts. Those parts themselves are not car, but you put it together in functions. So they're saying that the parts, and even the parts have causes and conditions, right? The glass was made by somebody, the tire came from somewhere else, and who made it, and how it came, and what kind of sap they used, how they made the tires. So it goes on and on and on. So things that arise and originate out of causes and condition, one. Things that depend on parts, and things that are constructed with words and thoughts. Then we label it, right? Now, as soon as you label it, it's concrete. But when you really look at it, there is no carness that originated by itself. We just label those parts that come together. That's the thinking you want to use. So something that is dependent arising, it is produced from causes and conditions like the cup that we previously looked at. And a product or effect does not come into existence through its own power. In other words, you have a cause, then you have an effect. Then you have a cause, you have an effect. Okay? So it depends on causes and conditions for it to exist that way. We looked at the blade of grass, for example. Remember, the blade of grass is an effect of a seed. The seed transforms into a blade of grass. We can think that conventionally, logically. But the seed itself needs causes and conditions, doesn't it? It needs warmth, it needs light, it needs moisture. And even those things have causes and conditions, don't they? So everything is dependent arising. And if it's dependent arising, it does not appear by itself. It is not static. It is not inherently existing. That's what they're saying. Again, relate this to emptiness of self, emptiness of phenomena. That's the core of all this. All these examples are to just impress upon you how things truly exist, but we don't see it that way. So causes always precede, effects follow their causes. Both of them can be at one time, cause and effect. Right? Then it cannot change. We also talked about an example of the dinner. So if you want something to happen like dinner, you must gather the required causes, right? Takes time. The causes need to interact to produce a dinner. Does not occur simultaneously, for example. It's not made from simply placing the groceries on the kitchen. Dinner doesn't come out. To have dinner, there are causes and conditions. To have groceries, there are causes and conditions. Another example of that. So what they're saying is a thing, a product, parts, words, and concepts cannot produce itself. Imagine anything that produces itself. And since that thing does not exist, it cannot produce itself, it does not exist. Its causes do not exist because it's its own cause. Okay, that's a little confusing. So just remember one thing, causes have an effect, and cause and effect don't exist together. That's all it's trying to say. So therefore, we can conclude that product, parts, words, and concepts do not inherently exist. Make sense? Even so, now bring it to the person that you are. So the person is composed of parts. Think about that. We may refer to ourselves of various times, various places. We have a mind, we have a body. Each moment of ourself is part of who we are. Your youth is a cause for your today's effect, right? 10 years ago, whatever you did, your experience is your own, your effect is today's, the youth was the cause. You can think that way. We are also made up of body and mind, and each of these are multiple parts. You're a product because you're parents. So when you think of that, a person is a construct of words and concept, because these are used to describe ourselves. Without these, there is no person findable within the body and the mind, or independent of body and mind. Okay? Again, it takes a little time to think through this logic, what Buddha is trying to teach us here. We can only give you some examples. We can try to show some logic, but you have to, you listen like you're doing today, but you got to contemplate on these things. And then when questions will come up, then analyze those, okay? And then you meditate on it. So now we're gonna go into the Heart Sutra, okay? This is the quintessential teaching on emptiness, okay? But before we get into Heart Sutra, there are a couple of things you must know, because it uses these words. There are some facts that you should know. And so I wanted to talk about it. So the Bodhisattvas, okay, when you, as an ordinary person, you get into the Mahayana path, you become a Bodhisattva as an ordinary person. The first step of the path is called the path of accumulation. Okay, this is the first stage. And what is it? What is the path of accumulation? You are creating merits. You're creating merits. And when you are in it and you understand you're part of the universal vehicle, you spontaneously generate this bodhicitta. You want to become Buddha to benefit others. Okay? And it spontaneously generates that kind of a feeling. And then when you, in your meditation, as you're listening, contemplating, and meditating, you reach a special insight. Insight is looking for that self-nature, what we've been talking about, how we are, who am I? That nature, you have a good understanding of it. Also, with another class, they will teach you when you're meditating, there are 9 stages of meditation to make your mind truly absorbed, equipoised, and you're able to concentrate without excitement, without dullness, able to keep the object in your mind for a longer time. You reach this calm abiding meditation. Sometimes they use the word vipassana or samatha, Geshe-la will say. That's calm abiding or mind that is tranquil and absorbed. So when you reach that stage and you have that insight, that's when you realize, I need to understand emptiness. I need to perceive an emptiness directly. So you start to develop this mindset of bodhicitta and start to accumulate merits. Then you move on to the next step, preparation. As you analyze and as you fine tune that, you are preparing to a stage to see emptiness directly. Directly, nothing else. You are able to see directly. When you reach the path of seeing, you are now seeing emptiness directly. You can see the reality as it exists. Okay? And then, of course, as you know, in Buddhism, everything has a 1 of this and a 5 of that and a 10 of these. There are 10 stages from the path of seeing all the way to the last path of no more learning. When you become a Buddha, there are 10 stages. First 6 are you're perfecting your generosity and morality. These are 6 perfections, and you're working through that. You perfected it, you can say, generosity and morality, and then patience, and then joyful effort. And then you have already developed your calm abiding meditation. You can concentrate and ultimately able to see emptiness. Till you reach a certain point, there are still obscurations, mild obscurations. And they're called afflictive obscuration and cognitive obscurations. Tendencies from seeds, from karma, very subtle, and some points of laziness or some points of ignorance may still linger on. You're clearing that completely. So when you are in meditation, everything is clear. You are in one point, and ultimately when everything is gone and you are completely in the understanding of how things exist, you become a Buddha. And that's called path of no more learning. And why am I telling you this? Is because in Heart Sutra, the teaching is based for ordinary being, middling, and advanced practitioners or intellectual beings, they call it. I don't use the word intelligent. We are intelligent, but different scopes of people who understand these teachings. So you can see that for you, you may say, okay, form is empty. So you understand in English, the form is empty, but for advanced practitioners, it means something different, more than that. It's talking about path of accumulation and preparation, that area. So I will go through that. So it's important that how we can relate this path with the Heart Sutra. So the first part in Heart Sutra, I'm going to make sure our time is over. We have good timing now. So when you look at the Heart Sutra, it is broken down into what they call the common prologue, the uncommon prologue, then there's the actual discourse, and then how this conversation between Sariputra and Avalokiteshvara takes place for ordinary beings. Okay, that's the first part. So let's take a look at that a little bit. So this is how the sutra starts, right? It says, "Thus did I hear at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on the mass of vulture mountains in Rajagiriya together, with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas." So when you read it, it just seems like a simple some language. Now, if you look at it, what it's talking about is the excellence of time. It's indicated by the first line of the sutra where it says, "Thus did I hear at one time." These are the words of someone who's testifying that they have directly heard these words and are compiling them. The second is the excellence of the teacher is established because the teacher was in fact Lord Buddha. So the excellence of the teacher, the Bhagavan is the word. Okay, so it's talking about Buddha. So it talks about the excellence of the teacher, the realized being, right? And of course, Bhagavan or Buddha is the one that possesses all the attributes and qualities and has transcended both samsara and nirvana. Right? And he's also victorious over the four, what they call maras or obscurations, obstacles, such as emotions and death and pleasure and all that. It was when he was practicing, all these things came to him and he said, "You will no longer affect me." Right? So those are the maras. So that's why it's the excellence of the teacher. The next one is the excellence of the place. Okay, the teaching was held at the Vulture's Peak in the kingdom of Rajagiriya. Many of us from Kadampa Center actually went to that place. It's a wonderful, beautiful place. A lot of people come there, and we actually recited Heart Sutra right where it was taught. It was wonderful to have that experience with Geshe Sanpo and some other monks from Serajay and a couple of our members from Kadampa Center. So, and with the venerable nuns that were with us, it was a fantastic experience. And the fourth is the excellence of the audience. So it is said that the bodhisattvas descended and stayed there, and their disciples all came to listen to the Heart Sutra. So it talks about the excellence of the audience. Okay. The uncommon prologue. Okay, so what we're talking about is at the time the Bhagavan was absorbed in this concentration on the categories of the phenomena called the profound perception, emptiness. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, the Avalokiteshvara, looked upon the very practice. So it's through the contemplation, it's through the power of Buddha now. It's inspired now. This question and answer takes place. And looked upon the very practice of this profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also empty of inherent nature. You are all now familiar with the five aggregates, right? The form, the feeling, the discrimination, those compounding factors, and the mind consciousness are empty of inherent existence. So that's the thing that is going on. Any questions so far? Moving along. Then the actual sutra starts. This sutra means discourse, the teaching. Okay, so it says here, then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Sariputra said this to Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? This is a question. This shows the power of Buddha that inspires the question by Sariputra to Avalokiteshvara. So the inspiration is provided by Buddha. So this is the question, how one should see this. So he said that the Bodhisattva, so Avalokiteshvara said this to Sariputra. Sariputra, any son of the lineage or the daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent existence. So of course there are twofold conversations going on here, right? For the ordinary person and for higher ability person. Because people who are in the path of the Bodhisattva's path, you are talking about the path of accumulation, path of preparation. So they're thinking from that perspective. But here we are looking at what it is said, the ordinary way. Okay, the aggregates are empty of inherent existence. So this is also telling you how one should prepare for the path of accumulation and preparation. So now let's take a look at it further. So this is what is the conversation now. So for the ordinary beings, form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feelings, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are all empty. It's because living beings do not realize this and they believe that we inherently exist, that they generate attachment to the pleasing forms and aversion, which you already know from ignorance, right? And so all the problems that arise from this ignorance. So then we are told that the form is empty, empty of true existence. Okay, so the idea that it lacks inherent existence, there is a possibility of fall. You can also fall into this nihilism that nothing exists. Okay, but we already know relatively name and form and we perceive things, but we're talking about that true inherent existence here. And to eliminate that feeling nihilism completely, in other words, it also says, again, form is empty, emptiness is form. It balances it out. If you take the form is empty of inherent existence, then the emptiness, this phenomena of emptiness is form. It balances it out. Do you follow that? It's kind of tough to grapple. I have a video on that. Hopefully, Dr. Jinpa will do a better job than I'm doing. So this is to show that there is a way the form does exist. It's not simply non-existence. It is just empty and it appears as a form. So then it says, having said that form is emptiness and emptiness is form, there's still the possibility that someone might think and misconstrue this. This is in such a way as to think that the form on one hand is there and the emptiness on the other hand. And somehow the form is different from emptiness, and so that must be ruled out. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Form is nothing other than emptiness, emptiness is nothing other than form. So it balances that out. So you will see it separately like that. Follow that? Okay. So these are the lines that support the path of accumulation and preparation. Okay. think I am going to go to this video now. So let me do this. I may have to get out of the presentation, so this may take a little time here. Hold on. Can we get out of this? Yeah. It's still coming. Okay. Give me 1 second, please. Doesn't have to come here. Help me. Stop sharing.
However, the obstacle that lying on this emptiness and emptiness is form.
It will come up.
It's free.
Yes, yes,
But I want you to teach us
yes.
that part.
Well,
Sorry, it's not working for me, but I'm going to work it. Hold on.
I think, I mean, this is a very, very enigmatic kind of statement in the Heart Sutra, which also you find in other Perfection of Wisdom Sutras as well. And the way in which, it is helpful for, ordinary Buddhist practitioners to engage with that kind of statement is to really understand, why is the Buddha in the Heart Sutra
Can you see it, guys?
No, you'll need to share your screen and choose the browser, whether it's in Chrome or whatever you have,
Okay.
and share that browser with us.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm not good at these things.
That's okay.
Do you see it here? We gotta find it here.
You may need to click stop sharing first, and then you'll see the share screen option at the bottom.
He's not sharing his screen anymore.
So share screen.
Let's get the video first.
Do you see the chat button at the bottom?
Yes,
Right next to it should be share screen,
I'm going to share it right now.
and then it'll give you options of what to share.
Yep, we'll do that once. Let me first start the video, then we'll share.
However, the obstacle that lying on this emptiness and emptiness is form. You can send us to read.
Yes, yes,
But I want you to teach us
yes.
that part.
Well,
This is all.
I think, I mean, this is a very, very enigmatic kind of statement in the Heart Sutra, which also you find in other Perfection of Wisdom Sutras as well. And
So, Heyman,
the
Yeah.
way in which
if you stop your video, I can screen share. I've found it.
No, it's
And
not-
I can
coming, it's
screen
coming.
share and show it.
really
Oh,
understand,
there it is.
No,
you know,
sorry, we got it
why
finally.
is the Buddha in the Heart Sutra
So we're going to
drawing
start
such an
again.
equivalence between, almost like an identity.
Okay, now we can got it.
Perfect. Yay.
Sorry.
No worries.
However, the Heart Sutra, that line, all this emptiness and emptiness is form. You can send us to read,
Yes, yes,
but I want you to teach us
yes.
that part.
Well, I think, I mean, this is a very, very enigmatic kind of statement in the Heart Sutra, which also you find in other Perfection of Wisdom Sutras as well. And the way in which, it is helpful for, ordinary Buddhist practitioners to engage with that kind of statement is to really understand, why is the Buddha in the Heart Sutra drawing such an equivalence between, almost like an identity relation between form and emptiness. So form is here only an example because you have form aggregates and feelings and so on. And the reason that is because it is not so much emptiness that we grasp at, but rather it's the reality of everyday things that we encounter within our life, whether it is the objects around us or whether it is our own experience of pain and pleasure or thoughts and feelings that we constantly live in our day-to-day life. These are the things that we engage with in our everyday life, and these are the things that either chain us to a particular strict kind of constrained way of looking at things, and then give rise to more negative emotions and so on, and perpetuate the cycle of habits and patterns and so on. So by pointing out that form is emptiness, the Heart Sutra is radically reminding us that the objects of everyday life that we relate to, which seem so real, so tangible and so solid and concrete, but in fact, if you reflect deeply, the kind of concreteness and solidity that we have imposed on them is more of a construct. The reality of these phenomena is that they are thoroughly dependent, they are thoroughly contingent, and even our concepts of, say, a flower already presupposes many other concepts, that are, part of it. So, but in our naive kind of, way of relating to the world, we tend to look at it as if these are independent silos or discrete things that somehow, like billiard balls hitting each other, we grasp onto them, we impose upon them a reality that is way beyond what they possess. And pointing out this through the teaching on emptiness, the idea is to, teach us how to have a less grasping. But then the danger is that with human mind, anything that we find beneficial, we find useful and helpful and true, then our tendency is to immediately grasp onto that one.
Yes.
So now if form is emptiness, then emptiness must be true and real and absolute. Then we have a tendency to grasp onto that. And then there, basically saying emptiness is form, the Buddha is pointing out, although that is the ultimate truth of things, but that ultimate truth is only true in relation to the everyday object.
Yes.
So it's not something that is like standing outside, independent, transcendent. So then again, the relationship is drawn back so that, And then in the Heart Sutra, the text goes on to say, there is no, form other than emptiness, and there is no emptiness other than form. So it's really then that identity relation is even being drawn stronger, so that no room is left when there is even a tiniest possibility of grasping either onto the everyday world of objects or to the emptiness of their things. And that's a way of, in some sense, it's like, using emptiness as a medicine to cure our grasping at form, but then using another medicine to cure the potential of grasping at emptiness itself, so that the medicine does not turn into poison. And so that's why there's this constant, kind of play between form and emptiness and form.
Shadows go again and then stop frozen.
Hey. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, it looks good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I thought that Dr. Jinpa did a very good job how Buddha is trying to bring us to a fully understanding of how we see things and concretize things, and why these words are used. The form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form is not other than emptiness. The same way feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are also empty. It's empty of inherent existence, right? So because we, like he said, we concretize everyday life we interact with, and it's trying to show you that when you really deeply analyze it, that we give a little too much of the concreteness to it. So again, that's what I wanted to share with you. Okay. The path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning. So this is where now the next teachings will go. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So Sariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristics, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, and not deficient, not fulfilled. So remember, the path of seeing is when you see emptiness directly. When you are seeing the reality the way it is, then you see it's empty, the phenomena are emptiness without characteristics. You see how causes and conditions work, how things are going on, and you see it the way it is, very factfully. That's why they use this word, unproduced, unceased, stainless. Okay. Now you are in path of meditation. You're totally engaged in one point concentration. You see the emptiness, totally in meditative stabilization, and it transcends all duality, no subject, no object, right? So this is where it says, Sariputra, therefore in emptiness there is no form. No feelings, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no I. Think about it. It's not, if you look at it from a mundane point of view, you would say, oh, I don't have a nose, I don't have an eye. But those are word constructs. If you are in that state of mind and you can see emptiness directly, you're not putting any words onto any parts, which they look at it, how everything is interconnected, how everything don't exist the way we see things exist. We give labels, the nose, the eyes, the ears. So in that state of mind, when you're fully concentrated, fully in meditative equipoise, these words are used. Therefore, no I element, and therefore there is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on. Sariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely and dwell on the perfection of wisdom. It is a Vajra-like samadhi. Samadhi is the last state of meditation, final moment of a sentient being before he or she becomes a Buddha. And remember, we defined Buddha with omniscient and omnipotent, fully aware, sees the things the way they exist. And in the end, path of no more learning. So the mind without obscuration, without fear, having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. So then we move on to the Heart Sutra. For the sharp facultied one, it says, therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of the great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, it goes on to say, this is the mantra. Tayatha gate gate, paragate, parasamagate bodhi soha. If you were to just mundanely look at those words, it would say, thus it is like this, tayatha, gate, go or gone, or go. Paragate, gone beyond, gone to the other shore. Parasamgate, completely gone, and bodhi is the mind, soha. But now if you really look at the advanced practitioners, they are now talking about the path of accumulation. It's saying go to the path of accumulation, path of preparation. That would be the gate. Thus it is like this. Okay, so there's tayatha. Okay, gate, go. And those go stand for go to the path of accumulation, generate the spontaneous bodhicitta. Go into the deep insight and understand how the self truly exists. Then path of preparation, go and prepare to see emptiness directly. Okay? And then go beyond is now you're seeing the emptiness directly, path of seeing. Parasamagate, now you are in meditation completely, go completely beyond, completely equipoise, fully understands the emptiness, sees the emptiness directly, and there is very close to becoming Buddha. And finally, bodhi, soha. Bodhi means mind. That is awakened mind now. Mind that is liberated. Soha, so be it. So the entire Heart Sutra is in that mantra. Tayatha, gate gate, paragate, parasamagate, bodhi, soha. So you see how path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning is incorporated for the higher advanced level thinkers or faculty practitioners. So when you get a chance, there are some wonderful books out there. The Essence of Heart Sutra, for example, is one. Take your time. And then I think Linda may have shared a commentary from Lama Konchok, I think, from Lama Yeshe archives. When you get a chance, read through it. I had to read through it 3 times, and it really moved me because it really explains the essence of Heart Sutra very nicely. So when you get a chance, please download that and print it and read through it. It walks through the Heart Sutra. And now that you have a basic understanding of what Heart Sutra is all about, what is the first part talks about there is no I, and I mean the form is empty, emptiness is form. So this form, if you look at it, it's how causes and conditions, right? You can now start to make some sense out of it, and your mind will go teeter-totter between how we see things normally and then deeply think about it and say, I get a glimpse of that. You get to that feeling sometimes. Okay? So we have a few minutes left. We're going to do a really nice meditation. No, before that, there's one more slide on this. So how this was admired by the teacher. The Bhagwan arose from the concentration and commented that the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara saying, well said, my son, well said. This is how it is. So they rejoice, everybody rejoiced. This was confirmed by Buddha. That is exactly how things are. So, and there was a joy, all the Bodhisattvas rejoiced. Okay. So we're going to do a meditation. And before we do meditation, I want to take a moment to give some respect to Venerable Rene Fusi and some credit. I wanted some simple meditation that people could understand in like our current state of mind, ordinary people like us. And he was very kind, and I was attending some of his teachings, and I was getting downloads. And he's been to Kadampa Center, and he's ordained by Dalai Lama more than 30 years ago. A Swiss monk, Rene Fusi, Venerable Rene Fusi, has studied with some of the greatest scholars and inspiring lamas in Tibetan diaspora. He also performed numerous extensive retreats, including 2.5-year seclusion, focused on the graduated path of enlightenment and developing mental stability. So this meditation comes from him, and he said, yes, you can share it. So I'm going to share it with you. So now take your position, get seated properly, relax your mind, back is straight, all the 7 postures that we've talked about in every class. Head tilted, eyes slightly open, hands are relaxed, right hand over left hand, thumbs are touching, mouth is slightly open, jaw is not tight, just in a nice straight position, okay? So when you meditate on emptiness of inherent existent I, and once this inherent existent I crumbles, and you experience the emptiness of inherent existent I, you discover a new sense of I. I that is merely mere I. I that is merely imputed on body and mind. But that I exists. That I can generate love, compassion, and so forth. That I can reach enlightenment, and that I exist forever. Mere I. But that mere I, while existing, cannot be found anywhere as existing from its own side. It is there, it exists relatively. But if one is not satisfied by that and wants to look for something more to look at, and or look for it as an existing from its own side, one doesn't find it. That's why we did the 4-point analysis, that I can't be found. Emptiness does not mean that the I does not exist at all. Because if that would be the case, there would be no one to be able to generate love. We cannot develop love, compassion, and so forth. There would be no one to teach enlightenment. At the beginning, when you meditate on emptiness, it seems to kind of undermine the functionality of things. Questions like, if it is empty, how can it actually work? How can it function? That means one hasn't yet completely grasped what emptiness and dependent arising mean. One has to continue to investigate. We might have the experience sometimes in our own investigation, but actually, if one does it correctly, as one's mind develops, then you focus on the emptiness of inherent existence. It doesn't remove the existence of the phenomena. It removes the inherent existence, and you are left with something, and that something can function. Even though it exists as a mere name, mere imputation, it can function. And when you realize that I does not exist from its own side, there is another sense of I that you experience after that. And this I, although not existing from its own side, can certainly generate love, compassion, can become a bodhisattva, and can reach enlightenment. That is what you have to intuit or think or contemplate on in a deep, deep way. You have to be able to experience that gradually. this mere eye that is left, and by cultivating thoughts of love, remembering the kindness of others, wishing them well, wishing them all the goodness in life, wishing them to be free of suffering, wishing them all spiritual qualities, wishing them enlightenment. By cultivating those thoughts, love grows in your heart. Love is dependent arising. It depends on you cultivating the harmonious, agreeing, or concordant thoughts. And those thoughts induce a certain emotion in your heart. And then the emotion induces more thoughts, and the thoughts increase the emotion. While being empty from its own side, by cultivating these thoughts and those emotions, then love, compassion, and bodhicitta is born. Again, so even though there is no I existing from its own side, if you cultivate the thoughts, it will produce the emotion, and then the emotion induces more thoughts, which induces more emotion. All the while, if you look, who is the one who develops bodhicitta? Who is the one who meditates and on love and compassion? You don't find anyone. That is how gradually you merge your understanding of emptiness with your development of love, compassion, and bodhicitta. So we'll dedicate. Please dedicate your effort to understand this subject and meditate on its meaning to your attainment of Buddhahood, so that you will be able to lead each and every living being to that same enlightenment. Thank you. For the next class, last class, I'll cover a few more small topics, have some question and answers, and I want you to think about some questions. If I were to ask you right now, just no more than 3 to 5 sentences, okay? This is not an essay. You should be able to contemplate and say, so what is emptiness? You should think about that for a while. You've talked about causes and conditions, how things don't exist from their own side. So if nothing is inherently existing, you should be able to put some words around that. You should be able to answer, what is ignorance? Yeah. It's a mistaken, active misconception of how things are. So you can think through that a little bit and talk about how it's a root cause of all these problems, right? So we've talked about it. So I'm giving you some not all the answers, but I'm giving you some input here so you can think it through. And I'm just kind of connecting the dots again. And then what does emptiness have to do with liberation and enlightenment? So you should start to understand what's causing you not to liberate. So then you have the answer for the ignorance and how we do this I, me, and then we start, right? The 12 links we went through keeps us going, right? When you completely are away from all the afflictions and obscuration, you are liberated. And then ultimately with the 5 paths that we talked about, you can reach enlightenment to benefit others. Buddha is omniscient and omnipresent, right? Is able to, has the power to do anything that ever needs to be done. So we've talked about all those things, okay? You can, if somebody were to ask you, what are some famous teachings of Lord Buddha that gave on emptiness? You should be able to talk about Heart Sutra a little bit, the Heart Sutra at least. What is dependent arising? These are the kind of questions you should think about. And hopefully, if you haven't read the Heart Sutra commentary that Linda posted or sent to you, please read that one. That will solidify your understanding of the Heart Sutra and its meaning. Very nicely written. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Hemant. And I will send that. It's posted, the commentary on the Heart Sutra is posted on the website with the Discovering Buddhism materials, but I'll also send it to you all in an email, so it'll be easier to find. Okay.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, keep that, read it, keep it in a good place, once in a while, as you're meditating, you're going to have some questions in your mind, like, what does that mean? No nose, no eye, no this, no. Then you read it and you say, that's what they're trying to say. Okay. And then you relate to it. And then you kind of think about that. And at some point, things will start to gel with you. Then you start to feel that intellectually you start to understand what this is all about. And then you get excitement about it, excited about you are beginning to understand it. And now you can generate this calm mind. And then you can develop bodhicitta. And now you're on your way to path of accumulation, doing good merits, path of preparing, starting to think about emptiness, seeing emptiness. And then you get into the meditation and you finally can become Buddha. So there you go.
Make it sound so easy.
It is a lifelong learning. It's a lifelong training. And you know what? But if you don't put effort in it, if you don't get motivated to do it, and if you just say, okay, I kind of get it, things don't exist the way they exist and all that, then it stays there. And then you go out of that, my room here or your room, and there it is. There's the TV. Right? So we got to think through it. And once in a while, bring it in your life. And the best part is, if you even get to some point of intellectualizing it and understand how we get caught up in all these arguments and negativities and this chatter in the mind and anxiety, it will calm that down because you realize things are not how it appears. We make these things up because our ego is hurt, which does not exist, by the way. Or at least you get some level of intelligent view, right? So thank you. I won't go further.
Thank you, Hemant. We'll see everyone next week.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Bye.